So this is going to be just kind of all over the place, just questions and answers and top 10 lists and all that kind of stuff. It's been a crazy year. It really has, personally, professionally. But we're going to talk three-wheelers right now. We're out in the shop. It's like 82 degrees and it's hot, and you can tell it's New Year's Day. It's 80 degrees. Florida, it's crazy. It's crazy weather. So I'm gonna have a seat and I'm gonna answer some questions that some of y'all have written in. Had quite a few people respond, and so thought I'd take the time and answer those questions the best I could. And I may be able to show you the answer more so than tell you the answer. All right, well, Three Knives, which is a really cool name. Be careful with that, Three Knives. He writes in, he asked me, he said he'd purchased some 2-ply tires. He rides mostly on pavement, hard packed dirt, and open trails, and he was curious of what air pressure he should run in his tires. Now, he told me the size of the tire was a 25 12 by 9. Now, more than likely, Three Knives has a Big Red or a 200M. There were others, but those were the most common ones. So he probably has a hardtail bike. He didn't tell me, but I'm going to assume he doesn't have any suspension. He's got a rigid bike. So with that said, I'm going to answer your question like this. Your suspension is solely in your tires. Too much air pressure is going to make that bike bounce. It's going to make it ride really rough, and it's not going to be very comfortable. You're going to have to play with your tire air pressure that what suits you, and I don't know how big you are. A guy my size, I could probably go around with about 10, maybe 12 PSI in the tire. Now it's going to say on the side of the tire, recommended tire pressure. But again, because that bike has no suspension, it's going to be up to you, the rider. You're going to have to add air. What I would do is I would go ahead and put the recommended air pressure in the tire, which I know is going to be too much. Go out on the trail and just start letting air out every couple of minutes until you find that sweet spot. Me personally, I like the back of the bike of a hardtail, of a rigid bike, to kind of sway when you go into a corner. It's very predictable that way. I don't feel as topsy, if you will, when you have a really low air pressure. Now that's me. You're gonna have to find what works for you, but that's my suggestion to you. And thank you for writing in. I appreciate it, Three Knives. And I look forward to seeing you some more comments. Next question was Outdoor Nick. Nick likes to be outside. So all right, Nick. He says he wants to know if you can take a 200S front end. He actually specifically says the springs out of a 200S front end and install it in a 200E. And I'm gonna kind of read between the lines here, Nick. You've got a 200E and you'd like to put front suspension on it. No, you can't directly take the spring out from the inside of a 200S. That's a captured spring. It's under pressure and tension. You can't take that apart and install it in a 200E. We are working on a bike right now. It's about 4 videos ago. It's a 84 Big Red. I'll show it to you. And this is for you, Nick. This is a 200M front end here. And basically I've done a whole swap, and I know you said you didn't want to swap. You just wanted to change the springs out. And I get that. But there's really no way to do just the springs. This is a 200M. Now I'll go over this. Let me explain just a little bit more in detail here. You have 2 different wheel sizes. You've got an 8-inch and a 9-inch in that group of 200cc 4-stroke bikes. Those 2 wheel sizes are 8s and 9s. You're gonna find an 8 on a 185S. You're gonna find it on a 200S, which is what you asked about. You can take a 200S and a 185S front end completely. Triple trees is what we would call them, up at the neck and head bearings, all the way down to the wheel, tires, and the hub. You can take all of that and put it on any of the other 200 chassis. Here's the problem. You're gonna end up with an 8-inch wheel in the front, and they don't make a 25-inch tall tire on an 8-inch rim. So you end up running a 22-inch front tire and a 25 rear. Now for most guys, that's not a problem. They can run 22s in the rear and everything is on the same part. You can get a 22 on a 9-inch wheel. That's kind of where the difference is. You could change the hubs out and run 8s all the way around. So there's a lot of different ways to approach this. But if you want to maintain the 25-inch tall tire, then you're going to need a 9-inch rim on the front end. Now there's 2 bikes that have front suspension on their bike and a 9-inch front tire. And that's going to be an 83 200 no letter. It's just called an ATC 200. It was made in 83. They're not that common, but they are out there. It has a front suspension just like the 185S. except the forks are a little further apart, and it rides with a 9-inch front tire. The other front end is the 200M, which was only made for 2 years, but they did make a lot of them. And that's a very, very common swap, and that's what I just showed you on the bike over there. That's a 200 front end. I'm going to have to adapt a front fender. Now here's a couple things to keep in mind. The 200M has its own fender. No other front fender is just gonna bolt onto it. You're gonna have to make it work. So I'm gonna make an adapter basically to adapt a Big Red, because that would still give me a fender big enough for the 25-inch tall tire. It'd be wide enough and it would fit in a nice, you know, it would look good. But it's not just gonna bolt right in. I'm gonna have to make an adapter. So that's kind of a long answer, and Nick, and I hope I answered your question and gave you some workarounds, if you will. So thanks for watching, Nick. I appreciate it, and I hope I answered your question. Michigan Quad Trails and Tails. He wanted to know about putting your old cars on the sideline when you take off on new hobbies, and that's exactly what I've done. That's my 53 Chevy in the back. It's a 2-door 210. It's a street rod. It's got a Cadillac 472 in it, punch 30 over, turbo 400 trans. It's not that fast. It's quick, but it's not fast. It's a sleeper is what I would call it. I put airbags on it for a while. Kind of ran through that fad. I took that out. It's just static right now. It's a fun car. It needs interior. It really needs interior. I found that cars are as expensive as a building full of 3-wheelers. So I'm right back where I started from, basically. So thanks for asking about that. I appreciate it. Michigan Quad Trails and Tails. That's my car. I did make a video of it. One of my early videos is me getting that car out. I had let it, and with all of us, life, you know, kind of comes up and you know, things get put on the back burner, and I hadn't moved that car in 3 years, and the dust, which I haven't moved it but once or twice this year, the dust on it was just ridiculous. And so I made a video of firing it up and taking it out, and then we took it for a little ride. You can look that up. It's on the channel if you really want to see it. But I appreciate you asking. And I always there was 2 cars that I really wanted. There's been others, but there was 2. It was a 53 or 54 Chevy 210 or a 63 Impala. That was my other one. And not a 64, not a 62. I like the 63. That was the one. I almost had one. I drug my feet a little bit too much by about 10 minutes and missed that one. So you live and you learn. All right, next question. ATV seat exchange. Now he posed a pretty big question here, so I'm going to take a few minutes and try to give him the right answers of what he's looking for. So here's his question. He says, what parts swap between a 200E, a 200ES, and a 200M? What are the more common parts, and what are some of the least common parts? That's a long list, and really the bike that I have out that we're working on, that hybrid, is what we'll call it. It's a 200M front end going on an 84 Big Red. Some parts are going to transfer from the beginning, 1982, the first Big Red, all the way to 1985, the 85 200M. Some parts are the same, and some have been modified just a little bit. So we'll just kind of go over it here, and we'll see. You can take the fenders off of any of the 3 models, the E, the ES, and the M. Here's the difference. The one in the middle, the ES, has it's shaft driven. It's the only one that's shaft drive, and it has reverse. And because it has reverse, it's got a larger sub-transmission. And when the left side, as you're sitting on the bike, fender, as it rolls down, it's been cut, and it goes around that sub-transmission. So that said, you can take the right side rear fender off of any of those 3 models. They're all the same. You can take the left side, and with a little trimming if need be, if you're taking a 82, 83 E or an 84, 85 M, you could trim that fender and it would clear and fit just a little bit on a 84 sub-transmission. So that's very common. Remember, the 84 shaft drive was a pivotal year for Honda. 218,000 bikes were made, that model, that year. And really, it's the only year that bike really exists. I know overseas there's an 85, but we're talking here in the US. So don't blast me too bad. In the US, 1984 was a 1-year only bike. It was shaft driven. It had high, low, and reverse. That's what I'm building here. Really, I think the 84 is probably the best year ever. I know they continue to make it, but I would even argue that it has options that a lot of your other newer bikes didn't have. And so I like the 84. It's my favorite of the 200cc class. The 200M does not have a transmission at all, no high-low. It's really kind of more like a 200S, if you will. It's just chain drive, no sub-transmission. The 200E, of course, has high and low. So front ends, all of those front ends will swap between the 3 models. The E, the ES, and the M, you can swap them back and forth. The ES and the E both are plagued with just a really, really poor design front end. And so that said, I recommend the 200M front end swap, the 200 no letter front end swap. So what other parts swap out? Well, you could take the axle out of the E and the M and you could swap them back and forth. All 3 models run 9-inch wheels, so you can swap those wheels all between all 3 models. All 3 models run the same tires as well, the 25 by 12 by 9. The cylinder up on the engines are the same. They're all 200cc engines. The only difference is the lower part of the engine where the starter comes in and where the transmission is kind of integrated into it. From the head up, the exhaust is the same. The tanks, there are a slight difference. Now, you can make them work. You can take any of those 3 models tanks and move them around. The 84 Big Red 200 ES and the 200M tank, to my understanding and for me looking at them, are exactly the same. The 200E tank is a little bit taller. Now, you may run into a problem if you start taking and putting, say, a 185S or 200S front end on a Big Red. You may have to run risers on your handlebars and gain about 1.5 inches of height to clear the tank. It's a little bit taller. So keep that in mind, that there is a slight variation in the tank. The 200E tank, best of my knowledge, is a little bit taller than the 84 ES and the 84 and 85M. All right, the racks on the rear, they are the same. The chassis are the same. The difference is the 84 chassis, of course, is going to have a shaft driven setup where it actually has a differential that is permanently mounted in the back, of course, as opposed to a live axle and a sprocket and a chain system. Overall, the seats are the same. If you've got an 82 or 83 Big Red, you've got a seat with a metal seat pan underneath it, and they are notorious for the vinyl to split, the rain and the foam to soak up the water, and then that rots the metal pan out, and you can't really find a metal pan. So your best bet is to find an 84. Remember, they made more of those bikes than all the other bikes combined, just about. A ridiculous amount of 84s. Go out and seek and find an 84 200 ES Big Red seat. It will have a plastic bottom to it. It will never rot out. It will never rust. You can always find, you can put foam on it and you can reupholster that seat. And it's funny, you being in the seat business, you already know that part. But a lot of people probably don't know that, and they don't know where to turn when they can't attach their vinyl to their metal seat pan. I've seen sheetrock screws, don't do that. I have seen self-tappers, which is about the only thing you can do on those, because you can't staple to them, and the little clips, the little fingers that are under there, they break off and they get brittle. So I advise anybody, if you've got an 82 or 83 Big Red and you need to reupholster your seat, try to find an 84 or ES or an 84 or 85 200M. I hope that answers your question. Those 3 bikes, those 3 models share a ton of parts. So again, ATV Seat Exchange, thanks for writing in. I appreciate it. Thank you for your questions. Thanks for supporting the channel. I've talked to you a couple of times this year. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it. Miss Lisa Bowles, she had some really nice things to say about the 3-wheeler community and me. And Miss Lisa, you didn't have a question, really. You were really kind and told me to keep doing what I'm doing. And she's part of the 3-wheeler community apparently, and we know some of the same people, and I think a lot of them, and I appreciate it. Just thank you for the kind words. The Van Halen bike, that was kind of a big bike. And I see I even have the Van Halen shirt on it. This is a Christmas present. This is from my daughter. She gave it to me. So I was a big fan of Van Halen, even, you know, long before, you know, Eddie passed away, when Eddie was still making new music. Van Halen was always, 5150 came out. Oh my goodness, that's an album is what name if you didn't know. Van Halen 5150. Y'all probably knew that though. When that album come out, man, that was just Panama. Man, that album was great. So anyways, even as a kid, I liked Van Halen. They were cool. And Eddie, he actually was a car guy. He had a couple Chevy trucks, Chevys, and he actually painted them up with the red and the white paint scheme. And I don't know that he ever had any motorcycles done that way, but of course he had clothes and some other items. That was his thing. And so with his passing, I needed to paint that tank anyway, and I got to thinking, I was like, you know, the paint scheme was already there. That bike is already red, white, and black. So it really wasn't a stretch to take it and to do that paint scheme on it, just as a tribute to him, and personalize that bike a little bit for me. It's a bike that I'm going to keep. It's one of the first real frame offs that I've done with a lot of modifications to it. That's a 200X, disc brakes, full suspension, but now it's got a high-low sub-transmission in it. And it took some work to get it in there, but it can be done. I did a review on that bike, put it up in the playlist. I did put the 200X cam in that engine. It does have the little bit better exhaust on it. So thanks for asking. A lot of people ask about that tank. And I was asked, why did you start a YouTube channel? And I just felt a void in kids and mentors and people helping other people, especially the young people. I know that I was blessed. I had several people that kind of took me under their wing and showed me, you know, which way to turn a screwdriver and, you know, which end of a hammer to hold on to. And those early lessons allowed me to do what I do now. And if it wasn't for those people, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And so the YouTube channel is really me just paying that forward. Me is giving opportunity to those that might not have it any other way. I know these bikes can be cheap, maybe not the sport bikes, but you can find a hardtail. You can drag it home for free or 50 bucks. And maybe, hopefully you can pick up a video and maybe fix it and get it running. And there's no greater feeling, there really isn't, than taking something that somebody else has given up on and bringing it back to life with your own two hands. And that's why I do this. Without YouTube is fine. That's why I got into three-wheelers. I could pick them up cheap. I could bring them in. I could tinker with them. Basic hand tools. If you've got a 10mm, I think you could rebuild any of these. But that's what drives me. It really is the bringing something back that others have given up on. And that's my motivation for it. The YouTube channel was just to kind of inspire others to pick up a toolbox, you know, get out and turn wrenches. It's a skill that you will find will apply to other parts of your life. It doesn't have to be just three-wheelers. Anything I show you about a three-wheeler, you can pretty much adapt it to a four-wheeler or a lawnmower, and a lot of instances, even cars and trucks. And if you can save yourself a few dollars by not having to call on somebody else, then you're money ahead. And that's how I've done what I've been able to do. It all starts with one bike. That's how I started. I bought one bike. I got it running. I fixed it up. I was excited about it. Look what I did kind of moment. You know, I rode it around the yard. It was a puzzle that I could go fast on. I mean, that's really all it is to it. Mechanics in general is just a collection of parts. And if they're assembled correctly, they will drive you around the yard. Keep it simple, as the old saying goes. So that's why I started a YouTube channel, was just to actually want to pass the knowledge on what people had told me. I wanted to tell to others, and especially the younger folks that might not have somebody to explain things to them. So for that's why I do it, and I hope that resonates and comes through the camera. That's it. That's the why. That's why I started a YouTube channel. So out of all the videos, I took the top 10 videos, and I thought maybe we would kind of talk about a couple of those and kind of tell you where are they now kind of things, which I thought was kind of interesting. So maybe you will too. Top 10 video was, I did a comparison in 1985. I took a SX and ES 250 and a 350X and lined them up there on the yard, and I got a lot of people like that. Everybody wanted to point out that I didn't have a 250R in that lineup, and I didn't because I couldn't find one. It's taken me 2 years to find a 250R that I could afford that was in my area, and I found one, and so we're going to have a lot of videos about that. That's it on the end. But that video really was about 4-strokes, and at that time, that's all I was really focused on, was the 4-stroke engine. I really hadn't dabbled much in 2-strokes. I'd owned a couple over the years, but hadn't really worked on a lot of them. So at that time, those were the biggest bikes I had. They were all 85s, and so it was a good comparison between the 3 bikes. I thought it was pretty good. Number 9 was my first sponsor, actually. Dr. ATV was kind enough to send me some CDIs for an 84, as I did a video on converting a round plug, which is your early style CDI, to the square plug, and then also how to omit the gray wire on the 84. So number 8 was bad brakes. That bike kicked my butt. It's out in the boneyard right now. I really don't know what I want to do with that bike. It had such potential. It looked so good. It was lipstick on a pig is what that bike was. Actually, its fenders are actually going on to another bike. So that bike is going to live on, maybe not as a whole, but its parts are going to live on. The tank that you just saw on that 84, and then the fenders are going to go on it too, because the fenders is why I bought that bike. That leads me to actually goes right into the next video. Is number 7 was what it's worth, and that was a video that I did pretty early on, and I kind of voiced my opinion about what bikes cost and how I arrived at what I thought the value of them was. And whew, y'all let me know real quick. Most of you were kind and agreed with what I had to say. Some weren't, but that's okay. And you know, everybody's opinion is everybody's opinion. That's just the way it is. But that was a fun video. I was a little nervous. That was probably the most nervous I've been, even though it wasn't the first video. It was probably the most opinionated video. And so yeah, I put the value out there of how I assess the value, and I'll repeat it again. Your value is in the tank, the seat, and the fenders. Everything else is free. And so if you're questioning what I'm saying, watch that video. I think I do a pretty good job of explaining that to you. But yeah, I stand by it. I still believe that the tank, the seat, and the fenders is where the bulk of your value comes from when you're buying a used bike. So check that video out. That actually came in at number 7, which surprised me. From this point on, a lot of how-to videos. So that kind of goes back and makes me feel pretty good. I made the right decision to take the time to show people how to fix things. And so if you look at number 6, that's how to change a clutch. Now, most of these bikes, even in the 250 class, which is what we do, the 200 cc's, any of your automatic clutches, they're pretty much straightforward. If you follow that video, basic hand tools, you can get by with that. It's the only thing you may need is the puller itself, but you can find that at Amazon. Y'all know I'm a big fan of Amazon. Number 5, halfway there, is the buyer's guide video. That's where I had 2 185S's. And the ideas for these videos come up. It depends on what I have in the shop, of course, as to what video I make that week. And I had just brought in a really, really rough 185S, and we got it running, and that was all well and good. But sitting next to it, this really, really clean 185S. And I thought it was a good opportunity to show a comparison between the two, what your dollar gets you. So that ended up being a pretty good video. That was number 5. The 84 Will It Run video was really big. Y'all like that one? I think I'm gonna try to do more Will It Runs. Right now, 3-wheelers are hot, and that does not make easy to find cheap non-running 3-wheelers. So there you go. So my number 3 video was how to do a top end, and I think that's awesome. That the most complicated part of any of these bikes, it's really not that complicated. I did a video on it, and it was received so well. The people that write in the comments is thanks, that worked great. You know, didn't know that, didn't see that, you know, kind of things. If you can do a top end rebuild and retime your engine, which is probably the hardest part, the rest of owning a three-wheeler is a cakewalk. It really is. That's the hardest thing to do. It's not that hard. That's a long video, but you can certainly fast forward it and kind of skip around to the parts that you need help on, and hopefully I've covered it well enough that it gets you through any hard parts that you may run into. But that's great. I'm glad that a how-to video is so close to the top. Number 2 video is actually the number 2 video, or the second video I did, was the best three-wheeler ever. And I don't know, maybe the title has something to do with that. Every model built in 1984 at one time. I don't have those bikes now, but I did then, so it was a perfect opportunity to line them up. And it was really early on, y'all. I think that's my second video. So still pretty nervous talking to the camera and speaking and not stumbling over yourself. And I still have a lot to learn, as you can tell. But that was a fun video. In hindsight, I covered a lot of ground there. I think there were 7 models, from the 185S to the 200 no letter, to the 200S, to the 200E, the 200ES, the 200X, the 200M. I think that's all of them. I think there's 7, but we had one of every one of those represented here at the shop, and that was pretty cool to be able to do that video. I knew it was an opportunity that I probably wouldn't have for very long, so I was glad I did it. And to see them side by side, you could clearly look and see the different changes that went through the models. That's something you don't see. You know, when you see one bike by itself and you don't have the rest of the bikes to compare it to, you kind of forget, you know, what makes that bike different or what makes that bike special. So that was kind of fun. I enjoyed that. So that leads us to number 1. Number 1 video, y'all know what it is. If y'all's fast forwarded to this part, do y'all fast forward? Is that still what they call it? Probably. Skip. Yeah, skip. Y'all skip. That's what you do. You don't fast forward. That's old school. That's right. I'm old. So number 1 video, of course, is the 250R. And now I answer that question. Everybody asked what was wrong with the 250R. And the bolt, the retaining bolt that holds the sprocket on, was stripped out. I think that was the biggest problem with that bike. Apparently the chain had come off at some point in time. It had wadded up in there. It broke the chain cover off, which split the 2 little stubs that stick out on the side of that bike, and it split them. I had to retap them and cut them back, and then had to actually add little small washers to space it out to get the chain guard to clear the sprocket. So that took care of that. The case was not split, thank goodness. We got really lucky on that. And the other problem with that bike is brakes. No brakes. The front caliper was shot, the back caliper was shot. I've tried everything. I've let them soak. I put them in heat. I did everything I possibly could to try to save those calipers, but they were shot. Being outside for all those years, the metal and the aluminum just fused together. I couldn't get them apart. But 10 years took its toll on that bike, but it's coming along, and I've been riding it, and I've been having a ball with that bike. I've been missing out. The 250R, I should have found one a long time ago. It's a beast of a bike. If you've never ridden one, I highly recommend you ride one. It's why it's probably hailed as the most favorite three-wheeler of them all. Production numbers on those bikes are really a lot lower than people think. If I know in '86 they made 13,000 of them, and that's not a lot of bikes. If you think about the entire U.S., 13,000 bikes, and I believe in '85 I think they made 27,000. So they made 10,000 more in '85. '85 is the most common year. '86 is the last year and also the least produced year. So if you can find an '86, they're a little more sought after just because of that fact, but they're really, either one of those, hands down, have probably got to be the funnest bike out there. It's not for the faint of heart, let's say that. It surprised me a little bit. But anyways, the '86 250R, that's it down on the end. As much as I want to just throw money at it and put fenders on it and make it look perfect, it's so cool just being a survivor, knowing the story of that bike. And really, it is one of those stories that just never happens. A friend calls me and says, "Hey, I hear you're into three-wheelers." I'm like, "Yeah." And he says, "I know a guy." I said, "Well, give me his number." And he does. And I called the guy, and the guy didn't hang up on me. He was like, yeah, I'll sell it. And I'm like, I'm on my way. And so we did a video of that. It's the same day that I got the little CT70 clone. He had an appointment in the morning, and so I was right there, because it's one of those things, when you hear of a deal like that, you act upon it. You don't wait. You move on it quick, because it will not be there. It's one of the funny things about three-wheelers. Nobody wants a three-wheeler until you find it, and then everybody's going to try to beat you to it. It's the weirdest thing. I don't know if there's other hobbies that are like that or not, but three-wheelers are weird. So let me show you what we got in the shop right now, and I'll tell you some of the ideas, some of the plans, future projects we got coming for 2022. So you're all familiar with the 86 250R. Here she is. I was able to get quite a bit of color back in this fender, and I was reading a post the other day. A guy was talking about he was actually able to sand this down. I don't know. It's original fender, I'm told. And man, I know I can plastic weld that here where the crack is, but it's cool. It is so cool. We got brakes on the front. That is the tire that came with it. We got some tires on the back. Those 22s, I told you I don't like them. I'm gonna run a 20. So I'll go ahead and ask the 250R community. I like a smaller tire. Two reasons. Lower center of gravity, and especially on a two-stroke, I want the RPMs up. And so I like a smaller tire. I'm considering an 18 or a 20. So if you don't mind, if y'all will, in the comments, write down what size rear tire you have on your 250R and what type of riding do you do. And I appreciate it. Thank you. So as of right now, we're going to keep cleaning and tuning on this bike. And I don't know. These are not original fenders on the back. You see there is red in here. We're gonna try. I'm not gonna give up on them yet. There is not a mark on them. I mean, it's just like they were put on and then set outside. I hate to not use them. I really do. Ken, I still love that seat. Thank you. 350X. Now y'all haven't seen this much on the channel. I used it as an original intro to the channel. This is my 350X. This is an 85. It's got white fenders on it. It's pretty much exactly the way I bought this bike, and it's a 20-footer. I did put the LED headlights in it. This tank, I have the original tank. We're going to do a tank cleaning. This is a plastic Clark tank, and I like it, but I have the original tank, and if I can run the original tank, I prefer. So, but that's it. And she is a handful. She is a handful. I want to do a comparison between these two bikes. That's certainly going to be a video, but it's going to be a riding video. It's going to be a walk around, and it's going to be some hard pulls and a good comparison of both of these bikes. Same environment, same rider, all that kind of stuff. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a good day. So this bike you haven't seen either. This was my first 200X. This is before I started the YouTube channel. This is an Auto X. It was talked about in the comparison video, the best three-wheeler ever. It will probably deserves its own video, but that's the first 200X I ever picked up. It's an 84. It did suffer from the slipping kickstart, and that's why I opted to put the Auto X in its place. I still have that engine, and I am not giving up on that engine yet. There's got to be a way to fix it. Now this one actually did make a YouTube video. We went down to a little town about 2 hours south of me. This is an 85. And I really like this bike. This was the one with the smooth sand tires. This is the Sand Shark tires. Yeah, that's that one. But it is a fun little bike. It's still clutch. It's it's the way it's supposed to be. 85. They got most of the bugs worked out on that kicker by then. This kicker does not slip, and I'm thankful for that. But everything works on this bike. This would be what you would find in a barn if you would. Someone has put a widened axle on it, and those are Douglas wheels on the back. The bike's really complete. It runs well. It runs really good. It's fun. It's a clutch bike. Then we got our Van Halen bike. Y'all saw the videos on that. I did a 3 or 4 part series of building that bike up. I still think it's It's a good looking bike, and I'm happy to have built it. You see I'm running the 18s on here. I like the small tire. I like to hear the engine whine. That's just me. I like the lower center of gravity too. This is an 84 I'm working on now. We started a video on that. We'll do one more video on it. I got sidetracked with the 250R, but you can't blame me. Come on, if you had a 250R, you wouldn't work on this either. So we worked on the 250R, but we got to finish this up. This is my work area. This is where I feel comfortable working. I'm closer to the tools. It's better lighting here. It's going to be a nice bike. This is an 84 with an 84 200 ES, big red, but we've got a 200M front end on it. And what's going to make this one kind of neat is I took the time to weld in the gussets for the racks. So even though this is a 200M front end, we'll still have the racks and the caged headlight that makes it look like a big red. So I'm excited about that, you know, in a different kind of way. This is our CT70 clone. Haven't touched it since the videos and I brought it home. I've ridden it around the neighborhood a little bit. It's fun. Somebody was given a welder and they used it. Dang, I don't know what they were thinking. I know what they were thinking. The handlebar broke off because they probably wrecked it and they just made something work. And I get that. I wouldn't have done it, but I get it. I get it. But that's going to be a fun little bike. I don't know what we're going to want to do with it. We're going to do something with it. The bikes here, we've got an 85 200 ES. We've got my first original bike. This is a 1985 SX. Y'all watched me pull the swimming pool down with that bike. Love that bike. This is the bike that started it. It really is. That ugly bike started this channel. I didn't know a lot about three-wheelers. I had been buying and fixing three-wheelers, but I didn't know a lot about them. And that bike come in the shop, and I picked it up on Thanksgiving Day 2019, and it's got a new top end on it. It's really ready to go. I just don't know what I'm going to do with it. I've got plans, but these racks is what makes it special. I made a video, very first video I ever made on my channel was about these chrome racks on this bike. And I asked the three-wheeler community, had anyone ever seen chrome 200M racks? And I figured people were going to come out of the woodwork. Oh yeah, everybody's got those. Zero people have chrome front racks. All right, now I'll give you some bonus footage. For y'all that stayed around to the end of the video, I'm gonna give you a little treat. So if you're gonna be in three-wheelers, and I mean if you're gonna have a couple around the house and you wanna keep them running, I've made a video about parts bikes. And a lot of people wanna know, y'all wanna see my junk. So here's gonna be a peek at my junk. So the only way to keep this many bikes going is it takes a lot of parts, and it's just part of it. Things wear out, and you can't order parts as fast as you may need parts. So don't judge, but this is my junk. So here we've got an 84. This is the first Will It Run bike right here. It's got a really good front fender on it. It's really a good bike. We're gonna probably save this one. Behind it, we've got the original parts bike, which gave us the 200M front end that we needed. So we talked about parts bikes, how important they are. The front end off of that bike is the front end that I just put on that big red that I was showing you. So it's already paid dividends. We paid $60 for that whole bike. And that's the thing, you can buy these junkers for $50, $60, $100 maybe, and the amount of parts is just incredible. We've got a 200S. It came as a bulk purchase. I bought several at one time. This is another 84. You'll see a lot of 84s. They're my favorite. Another 84 chassis engine here. I try to keep things covered up engine wise. You know, spark plugs in the holes, don't leave those exposed. This is another 84 here. There's a chrome rack off of an 84. You don't see those very often. We did talk about them on the M, but they were more common actually on the 84. You could get a chrome rack option. But there's a stack of racks right there. Try to keep it organized. And then that right there is a is a 200E. Look at those tires on that thing. That's probably the one I shouldn't have bought. It was bad off. Tires. This is a 200S underneath here, isn't it? No, that's the next one. So we've got another big red here. This is another 200E. We've got a 200S here. We've got what do we got here? Okay, so we've got we've got two of these. This is a 250 ES big red. No, it does not have the rear axle in it. That's what everybody asks. This one here, this is another 82 big red, 83 big red here. And this is the other 250 ES big red here. This is parts for my SX bike if I ever need them. This is an old 185S. And this one, I think it had a howitzer on the front end of it. Look at the gun rack on this thing. I don't even know how all that worked. But if you've got that bracket there and then this up here, I guess she was riding and shooting at the same time. I don't know what that guy was doing. But that's actually my very first parts bike. I bought that. I gave $75 for that, and it was a complete bike. I was able to use the axles, the hubs, the tire, or excuse me, the wheels. The plastics were pretty bad off. I didn't get the plastics off of it, but the previous owner had put an aftermarket tank on it. And for $75, the tank alone was worth that. But then the little things, look, I need these right now. These little rubber grommets. See, I only got one, but I bet I can find another one. That's $6 on eBay right there. So that's why I do it. I got my own little parts house, and that's why I specialize in the 200 series bikes, because all those parts really are so easily transferred back and forth. The 200cc class bikes from the 185 all the way up to the 200M, a lot of those parts swap over, and that's why I have parts bikes that fit those. Where I live, the 200cc utility bike was probably 20 to 1. You would find for every 20 of those bikes I find, I may find one 200X. But I wanted to finish this year off, 2021, thanking y'all for supporting the channel all year, and you know, your kind words and your comments and everything. Thank you. I do appreciate it, and I hope y'all gain something from it too. I hope it's just, you know, my channel's really not an entertainment channel. It's more of a how-to, and I hope I've been able to help some of y'all fix your bikes and keep them on the trail, and give you some other options maybe. All right, everybody, there you go. That's 2021. It's in the books, man. It's over, and I'm kind of glad it is. Personally, it's been a roller coaster. YouTube channel has really kind of kept me focused on better things and keep my mind somewhere in a positive direction. And for that, I'm grateful to each one of y'all. It's been a blast bringing these old bikes back, doing, you know, the Will It runs. It's really been a lot of fun, and thank you for watching. It's been great. So I just want to give a shout out to all of our sponsors this year. We've been really fortunate, and you know, as a new channel, you kind of have to prove yourself. You got to walk before you can run, and I've had some really nice people kind of step up to the plate. Dr. ATV, I'm grateful, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with you. Rebel Gears is going to be a name you're going to learn and hear a lot of in upcoming 2022. They are sponsoring a couple of videos. We're going to lift a bike, and we're going to need gearing to gear it down for the larger tires. So they've already sent me the gear. We've just got to build the bike down, kind of figure out what direction we want to go. So Rebel Gears, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to that build. You're going to hear a lot about them in the upcoming videos. So pay attention if you need gears. They do standard and factory gear sets all the way up to large, big gear reduction gear sets. If you've got a lifted bike, you've got to get the right gearing on that bike. And the majority of y'all are lifting chain drive bikes. And so call Rebel Gear. I'm going to put their information in the description, and they'll be able to help you out. 223 Cycles. My goodness, what a wonderful opportunity to work with y'all. Thanks again. That's going to be the carb on the on the 250R build we're going to do when we go into phase 2. That's going to be a blast. We have got to do some riding videos. Where I ride right now, it's hunting season, and so I tell the guys I won't ride there because I don't want to mess that up for them. So as soon as hunting season is over, then we're going to get some of these bikes and we're going to load them up and we're going to ride and we're going to have some fun. So look forward to some riding videos. I'm not sure exactly which ones we'll start out with. We'll see, but definitely going to do some riding videos. We're going to finish this 84 conversion with the 200M. We're going to finish that up in 2022. We're going to take our 250R into phase 2 in 2022, so that's going to be fun. And we're going to bring the 350X out. I've been holding it back. That 350X is a beast. We're going to tear it down a little bit and kind of go through it. I want to do a tank restoration on that bike, and then we're going to find out why that bike's so difficult to start. It's going to be a big year, y'all. 2022, 86 250R, 350X. I mean, you can't get no better than that. That's it. Thank you for all watching. I appreciate it so much. 2021's been a blessing. Even through some really dark days, it's still been a blessing. We've come out the other side of it, and I look forward to 2022. So, Happy New Year to everybody. Enjoy the time with your family this holiday. Happy New Year's. Get the kids out in the shop. They'll thank you for it. So take care, and we'll see you soon.